Friday night in Edinburgh is like Friday night in any big city. The weekend has begun and the police will soon be busy. Tonight alone, they will receive over 700 calls. During the course of the weekend, they will be called out to burglaries and break-ins. There will be reports of muggings and assaults on street corners. And the police will be called to break up fights in Edinburgh's 1,600 bars and clubs. Throughout the city, they will be stopping stolen cars and drunk drivers.
Yeah, because your speech is a wee bit slurred, isn't it?
And by the end of the weekend, the police in Edinburgh will have made over 250 arrests. Some of those arrested will be released after being sobered up or calmed down, but many find themselves here in the basement of Edinburgh Sheriff Court on Monday morning.
Hello, Switchboard. Could you ask if it's the Celsius Duncan Hughes to come assist us?
Most of these new arrivals will make a brief appearance in front of a sheriff before being released on bail.
It's the Fiscal's office. I'm looking for DC Watt.
It did seem to me that there were a number of charges, but you had clear fingerprint evidence.
There's also a Gary Jones, nothing.
Good morning. Not too bad. Yeah, very busy this morning, actually, on all fronts.
The immediate fate of the 100 or so people in the cells is being considered in the Procurator Fiscal's office. All prosecutions in Scotland are under control of the Fiscals, who are qualified solicitors working as full-time public prosecutors. Every year, the 30 Fiscals working in Edinburgh handle 14,000 prosecutions.
I don't particularly like having to prepare cases in a rush, but that's the way it is.
Week in, week out, the Fiscals come across the full range of the criminal repertoire. Monday is always their busiest day.
A typical Monday will have a depressing clutch of gentlemen who've been beating up their bide-ins or wives or girlfriends.
Assaults, either in a pub situation or a domestic situation.
Rapes and murders are comparatively infrequent.
Which is a peace in the street, shoplifting, housebreaking.
There will be a collection of people who have had too much to drink on Friday night or Saturday night and have refused to stop being boisterous, and then of course the police lay hands on them, and the next thing you know, 4 police officers have been assaulted.
Hello, cells.
The cells beneath the Sheriff Court are packed with people arrested over the weekend, waiting to be led upstairs into Court 1, where the solicitors will try to have them released on bail.
What, were they struggling violently with them? Why, because you're getting locked up? So a breach of the PCS, but no Police Scotland Act charge.
Is this guy a candidate for psychiatric assessment, or is he just bad?
Neil Allen is the Fiscal in charge of Court 1 this Monday.
Okay, I've written an instruction to clerks to accelerate to the 16th and bring him in. Okay, right, John, bye. It's a potential nightmare.
In fact, when were you arrested?
On Saturday.
Well, you might be out today, in fact.
Right, well, the main thing to do just now is just to check your bail position. Get you out here today, right, and then we'll sort out all other matters. But I'm only concerned today about sorting this case out and getting you out here if possible, okay?
Shouldn't have been a problem.
They want to get out on bail. It is the only consideration in the minds of any of them, as far as I understand it. It is the only question that their lawyers ask you before they appear: what is the Crown's attitude to bail for so-and-so? And you tell them, and that either makes or breaks the customer's day.
You're on bail on Tuesday.
Whether they're guilty or innocent, they'll postpone the day of reckoning so far as they can, and more often than not, in the end, the case will become a plea of guilty at a trial diet.
That's the old one for the assault and robbery. You know what that's for? Well, why can't you contact your social worker and say, look, I can't come?
Morning, Lord.
In Court 1, Neil is trying to digest piles of paperwork that have been sent up by his office.
I wouldn't have seen the papers ever before in my life, and it's really just a matter of trying to read very fast and filter out something that's relevant and tell the sheriff a little bit about what has happened.
Neil may decide to oppose bail if he thinks the accused is dangerous.
The complainer in charge 1, a woman in her early 20s, was waiting for a relative outside Woolworths. She had her 3-year-old daughter with her. The accused approached her, saying, "All these folk in Edinburgh keep giving me dirty looks. If they do it again, I'll kill your bairn." Now, at this, the complainer pushed the child behind her, and at that, the accused struck the complainer a full-blooded slap on the face. He then said, pointing at the child, "I'll kill your bairn and then I'll kill you," thus reducing the young woman to a state of complete terror. The accused claims to suffer from schizophrenia and attributes his conduct to his not having continued with treatment.
Mr. Megson.
Yes, well, as indicated, that really is the reason for the commission of these particular offences. He is currently been residing at the Talbot Centre in Glasgow, and they in fact see to his medication. They're currently in the process of trying to find him supported accommodation. Now, my Lord, although he has a large number of previous convictions, there are none, in fact, for violence.
I appreciate what you're saying, but meantime, I would not be prepared to allow Mr. Allen his liberty.
Throughout the day, the Fiscal's office keep up a stream of cases for Neil to process.
Are you John Dunlop?
I'm instructed to oppose bail in respect of this youth, my Lord. It's said that he is subject to 4 bail orders, and despite his youth, he appears to have been a regular customer of the children's hearing and to have continued this persistent offending now that he's past the age of 16. So there's a course of conduct going on here which requires to be brought into check in some way.
Mr. Gilfeather?
What I would suggest to your Lordship is that it may be appropriate for an early date trial to be fixed, given the fact he is a young man and there may be problems. And in fact, I can tell you there are problems in his background. His mother died of a drug overdose in 1985. His father was murdered as a result of a shooting incident in 1990. And since then, he's been cared by his grandmother. And what I would suggest to your Lordship is this, that it would be more appropriate for an early trial to be fixed. It is my submission that is far more appropriate than sending this young 16-year-old lad into Softon prison, where any criminality which he may have might be reinforced, my Lord.
John Dunlop, you will be released to the date. Stand up. You will be released to the date the Clerk of Court gives you. You will be liberated in standard conditions of bail, with an additional condition that you personally report to Leith Police Office every day, 7 days a week, until the date of the trial.
A few of those arrested over the weekend plead guilty and are sentenced immediately.
You Stephen Leake?
My Lord, I appear for Stephen Leake, who pleads guilty to charge 1 and not guilty to charge 2.
That is right, Mr. Leake. Guilty to charge 1, not guilty to 2.
Yes, those pleas are acceptable, my Lord.
Fiscal?
It was the early hours of a Sunday morning. The accused ordered a kebab. When it was produced, he decided to haggle over the price.
Turkish custom.
Well, yes, that was occurring to me, my Lord. When that did occur to me, I suppose, when in Rome, he was told that there were no bargains available, and his reaction to that, when he was told to leave, I'm not quite sure what was to happen to the kebab, but he shouted at one of the proprietors, "Fuck off, you black bastard," and he continued ranting at the witnesses using the usual colourful language with a pretty heavy racist flavour.
My Lord, my client tells me that he was under the influence of drink when he entered this shop, and that it's true that he tried to haggle with the proprietor regarding the price of the kebab. The reason for that is that he claims that the meat was cold, and therefore he was entitled to a reduction in price.
Fine £200, Stephen Leake. There's no point in talking to you. You're just a nuisance. You pay no attention to what's said to you. That means if you fail in the payment of any one instalment, you will go straight to prison. You will not be brought back to court. Do you understand that?
Trial on bail, my Lord.
My Lord, I appeal with Mr. Lyne.
As Monday wears on, bail is allowed or denied, trial dates set and sentences passed.
The date you will be released until that trial date and the standard condition, with a special condition added there too, that you do not contact the two named. Well, if I continue the original order at £3 a week in meantime, sentence is being deferred on you to the date the clerk of court.
By 5 o'clock, 100 people will have passed through Court 1.
The date you will be released until that trial date.
They're mostly between 16 and 23 or 24. They're mostly male. They're mostly unemployed. There are many of them involved in drugs. Many of them, I suspect, are inadequate in some way which would have come to the fore even had drugs or something else not started to play a part.
Edinburgh is a city with a big drugs problem. 2,000 people are charged every year with possessing illegal drugs. But the main target for police are not the users, but the dealers who sell drugs on the streets and in the clubs.
Good afternoon, this Fiscal's office, Ian McSpartan speaking. Is Mr. Runcie available by any chance?
For fiscals like Ian McSpartan, prosecuting street dealers is part of a normal week. These cases are tried in the sheriff and jury courts, the highest court in which a fiscal can appear. Typical is the case of Scott Johnston, who was arrested in possession of 18 tablets of amphetamine sulfate or speed. According to the prosecution, he had the tablets because he was a dealer. According to him, he had them because he was an addict.
18 tablets is the sort of quantity where an accused is likely to come along and claim that they were for his own use. And if I understand it correctly, Mr. Johnston will be seeking to put that defence to the jury.
The solicitor putting that defence on Scott Johnston's behalf is George Moore, one of the most successful in Scotland.
I don't say flippantly that I would treat a conviction as being one up on George, but I could hardly be truthful and say that it wouldn't give me some degree of pleasure to do that, because he's a very experienced and able solicitor, and for a young whippersnapper like me to be able to record yet another victory over him would be ideal.
Whether or not Ian McSparran gets that victory is in the hands of a jury. If they do reach a guilty verdict, Sheriff Thompson can impose up to 3 years in prison. Scott Johnston's trial will last for several days. The first witness is the police officer who arrested him.
But I will speak the truth. The whole truth? The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth?
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Who was this person?
Do you want me to name him? Or?
Yes, please.
Scott Francis Johnson.
And is he in court today?
He is, yes.
Could you point to him, please?
He's the gentleman with the white shirt in between the two police officers.
The gentleman sitting to my left. And upon carrying out the routine search of Mr. Johnston, did you find any item or items which drew your attention and suspicion?
Yes, a plastic bag which contained a number of tablets.
Would you look, please, at Crown Label number 1, Constable, and confirm by examining the item contained within that plastic bag and the label attached to it that those are the tablets within the bag which drew your attention?
Yes, they are.
And whereabouts were these found, Constable?
They were down the front of his trouser.
And accordingly, what did you do?
I cautioned the person and asked him if he could account for his possession of the tablets.
Unless there's any objection, and with leave of the court, would you refer to your notebook, please, and advise the ladies and gentlemen of the jury of what was said by Mr. Johnston?
May I refer to my notebook? Yeah. His reply was, "I don't take them, I only sell them."
So have I recorded you correctly as saying that you've noted him as saying, "I don't take them, I only sell them"?
That's correct, yes.
the case really resolves itself on whether the jury accepts the evidence of the officers in relation to the reply.
The accused replied that he didn't take them. Or to put it in his own words, I don't take them, I only sell them.
Did you write down these words at the time?
Yes, sir.
You did?
Sir.
Where did you write them down?
In my notebook, sir.
At the time?
Yes, sir.
So, in effect, what has happened here, Constable, is that simultaneously you and Constable McGaukin have written down these words.
That's correct, sir.
Now,
Fiscal can be sitting one moment sure that there can be nothing but a conviction in the case, and then one or two questions later, one or two wry comments from the bench later, can be plunged into the depths of despair.
Do you have your notebook with you?
Yes, sir.
Does it contain this reply?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps you could see it, please.
It is rare for a sheriff to ask to see a police officer's notebook, but by doing so, Sheriff Thompson discovers that P.C. Brain has written his notes in a way that undermines the credibility of the police evidence.
You've got, I don't take them. Can you explain how this has come to be written here?
I wanted to keep it on one line, sir.
The incriminating words, I only sell them, appear to have been squeezed in above the first half of the reply and in much smaller writing.
Why didn't you just go on to the next line to write the rest of it?
That's just the way I did it, sir, at the time.
I mean, had the next line already been filled in by you?
No, sir. I just filled it in as... What I did, I just put in on one line.
It seems rather odd that you should do that when you would have had a complete blank line.
I know it's peculiar, but I did just fill it in on top.
Yes, well, you better see this.
is this not perhaps a result of you copying something up?
No,
not
sir.
getting it right?
No, sir.
Missing a bit out?
No, sir.
No? But surely it would have been much more sensible to have written the words, I don't take them, I only sell them. If these words were said, running from one line to the other.
Right, sir, that's correct. But that's just the way I wrote it, sir.
I suggest to you that these words were never said.
They were, sir. Yes, sir, they were said.
And you say these are the only words said by my client?
Yes, sir, apart from answering his name and address.
And all the time you're with him?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It looks terrible to the jury when a police officer appears either to be telling an untruth or to have made a terrible mistake. Constable, you can see perfectly plainly what suggestion this lays you open to, can't you?
Yes, sir.
That, in fact, the words, I only sell them, at the very least.
Have been added at a later date.
Well, yes, indeed, Constable. Is it possible that, although the reply was made and you recalled it perfectly clearly, it was later in the day that you compiled your notes about this? Not a note made at the time?
No, it was made at the time,
Made
sir.
at the time, right. Okay. So it's most certainly not the case, Constable, that you wrote a reply as I don't take them, and then at a later date or time added I only sell them.
That's correct, sir.
Your evidence is that you wrote the whole thing at the same time.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Constable.
Tomorrow, Scott Johnson will give the jury his version of the events surrounding the arrest.
The battle for the jury to resolve is largely between the police evidence and that of the accused. And Mr. Johnson may well be able to cast sufficient doubt upon the veracity of the police evidence tomorrow to enable him to secure an acquittal. But we shall see.
Probably on Spain's ground. I don't think there's one on Phelps' ground ever. Yeah, you're probably right.
Right, top, got him.
Today, Neil Allen is in the summary trial courts. These courts are the workhorses of the legal system, dealing with less serious offences, handling over 90% of all criminal cases. Remand prisoners are brought in from local prisons, and throughout the day, the cells in the basement keep up a supply of accused people to the 6 courtrooms above. There are no juries, a sheriff decides questions of guilt, maximum sentence is 6 months, and justice has done its speed. Neil has 10 trials to get through, but only has time in the day for 2.
You depend on some accused not turning up, some accused pleading guilty. Otherwise, you do 2 trials and put 8 off for another day, and that's just hopeless. The system would grind to a halt. So a certain amount of horse trading has to go on. Do you want to continue the bail application? Is bail being blocked first? You won't know yet.
This horse trading or plea bargaining takes place every morning. Defence solicitors crowd round the fiscal and try to strike deals. The fiscal wants the accused to plead guilty, so saving the court a time-consuming trial. In return, he will reduce the number or severity of the charges they are facing.
1, 2, and 3. They shared 1 and each took 1. I don't think it puts an accused person in a difficult position because relatively few accused are going to trial on the basis that they are absolutely innocent and will go to their graves maintaining their innocence. Most of the ones who will be here today are going to trial because they don't want to plead guilty. In the end of the day, pleading guilty is the bitter pill, and if a little bit of sugar coating will make that go down, I don't think that's against the public interest.
Today, 9 out of 10 swallow that sugared pill and plead guilty. All that remains is for Neil to outline the facts of the case, the defence solicitor to offer a plea of mitigation, and the sheriff to pass sentence.
Mr. Fiscal. The accused seems to have taken extreme exception to his estranged wife's presence in the car park, and he started shouting and swearing, saying things like, "What's that fucking bitch doing here? And who the fuck let her in?"
Lord, Peter Dillon was a sergeant with the Royal Highland Fusiliers for some 14 years, and that's included service in Kenya and Northern Ireland on many occasions. My Lord, it's when he left the army that life became pretty difficult for him. He found it difficult to adjust and financially found himself in quite a lot of problems, and I think this contributed very significantly to the breakdown of the marriage.
Mr. Lynn, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to defer sentence on you for a period of 1 year for you to be of good behaviour, and that means just what it says.
The lady of the house, returning shortly before 3 o'clock, saw that the lower pane of glass in her front door had been smashed and saw that there was still someone in the house. She went to a neighbour's house in order to call the police. The complainers valued the property stolen at £379 in total.
My Lord, without exception, the offences shown on the schedule of previous convictions were committed by Mr. Smith after he had been involved in the abuse of drugs. With that in mind, Mr. Smith turned to the City Drug Problem Clinic, as a result of which he is now completely drug-free. And in respect of this particular offence, I am advised, my Lord, that he had in fact lapsed and had been allowed himself to take some drugs that had been given to him by a friend.
William Smith, the court will not tolerate breaking into someone else's house and stealing whatever you think you can get your hands on. You'll be fined a total of £150.
£6 a fortnight, obliged, my Lord.
£6 per fortnight, commencing 2 weeks today. So,
Lordship will see that it's theft by shoplifting, accomplished on this occasion by simply taking the items libelled, which are not particularly large, and concealing them within her jacket. Items priced at £4.89, which were recovered.
She is a single parent, my Lord, with a child aged 10 months, and she receives income support at the rate of £59 per week. She currently, I understand, has a fairly substantial outstanding catalogue commitment of £400, which she is presently having difficulty paying. That really relates to items that she purchased for her child.
The accused was placed under arrest in the back of a police vehicle, and as the vehicle was being driven along the Western Approach Road, the accused lunged forward at the driver of the vehicle, punched him on the face. There was then a violent struggle between the accused and the officer next to him in the back, who was trying to restrain him. The accused was eventually charged with breach of the peace and a contravention of the Police Scotland Act, and in respect of each charge he replied, "Fuck off."
Well,
We'll resume again after lunch at 2 o'clock or as shortly thereafter as possible.
Well, I think I got rid of 8 out of 9 or whatever it is, and that's been the morning. I wouldn't like it to be thought that one gets through the cases at all costs, but justice as a sort of grand concept is not available to us on our budget. That's a dreadful thing to say, but there is no way that we can air all the rights and all the wrongs of every single case. There is not the facilities, there aren't the resources, there's not the money to do it any different way. It's reminiscent of the time in MASH when Winchester arrives and starts doing fancy general hospital surgery and he's told to shake himself out of it. They say this is meatball surgery out here. And to a certain extent, I suppose it's meatball justice.
In the sheriff and jury court, the pace is slower, but the stakes are higher.
I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
To be acquitted, Scott Johnston will have to convince the jury that the tablets found on him were not for sale, but to feed his own addiction.
Now, Mr. Johnson, at that time, did you have a problem with illicit drugs?
Since about 14-year-old.
Would you speak up?
Since about 14-year-old, I had a serious problem with drugs. My mother and father got divorced. I started hanging around with people that were a lot older than me. I suppose in a way I was influenced by them. I started smoking cannabis from an early age. After that, experimenting a little bit harder drugs, sulfate, LSD. After that, I started feeling paranoid.
Did you take any help for this?
Well, I went to my doctor. I explained my problem to him. He then referred me to a place called the CDPS. It's a Community Drug Problem Centre.
Right, and what happened there?
He gave me 24 Valium to take per day.
24 Valium?
Yeah.
Per day?
Yes. I started feeling depressed on these drugs. I started having arguments with my mother, serious arguments, really falling out. And the drugs weren't helping at all. So I tried sulfate again.
Now, could you just stop there? What do you mean by sulfate?
Well, the street name's Speed.
Is that what we're dealing with here today?
Yeah, Speed is the street name for it.
How many would you normally take?
Depending on my mood, about roughly 5, 6 or 7, and that would see me through a day.
How did you afford to buy these tablets?
I was going out stealing, shoplifting, breaking into cars, shops.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happened when the drugs were found?
I was taken into a cell by the 3 officers. I was strip searched. I told them I didn't want to answer their questions.
According to all of the officers who gave evidence, you were cautioned and you said, I don't take them, I only sell them. Is that evidence correct?
I never made that reply. No, it's not correct.
Thank you.
I enjoy more than anything cross-examining the accused, destroying his explanation, hopefully making him look bad to the jury. So, for a time you stopped taking sulfate?
Yes.
To see if the treatment would work?
I tried to stop taking sulfate.
Well, Mr. Johnson, you told us that not only were you trying to cut down, but you did cut down. You cut it down dramatically to once a week, taking about 3 preparations of sulfate, and it's very commendable. I'm glad you were able to do that. But your position would appear to be then that for the whole period between starting at the CDPS and being arrested in September, you were hardly taking any sulfate at all.
Yes, but at the time that I got arrested, I was feeling depressed, on a low, really arguing with my mother, smashing up the house instead of hitting my mother. And I thought sulfate was the answer to my problems.
Sulfate was the answer because it, what, calms you down?
No, it makes me more alert.
Ah, right. It makes things worse instead of better, is that right?
I never thought so, no.
No. And what, it's just a rotten coincidence that at the time you were having fallouts with your mother and decided to get a very much larger amount of sulfate, just to do you the weekend. It's just a rotten coincidence and bad luck that the police arrested you that day.
It wasn't a very large, compared to what was taken, it wasn't a very large amount.
Well, you were taking 3 a week?
I was taking 3 when I needed them. Sometimes I take
I would hope not to be cruel to someone simply because they are the accused. my intellectual inferior. But when I get the chance to do a bit of knocking down, then I accept that gleefully. You're taking 3 a week. It's your evidence. You see, I don't know. I don't know, apart from what you tell us, how many you were taking, and you told us you were taking 3 a week.
You asked me, sir, roughly how often I took them, and I says about once a week. Now, on that once a week, I take about 3. Right?
Right.
Some weeks
Well,
I
that
take
works
more
out
than
at 3
once
a
a
week.
week. Sometimes I take more than once a week.
So it moved from roughly 3 a week to 25 a weekend, just at the very time when you were unlucky enough to be lifted by the police in Gorgie Road. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Well, that is bad luck, Mr. Johnson, to be sure. At the police station, Mr. Johnson, when the drugs were removed from their place of safety, you did say, when cautioned, that these were for selling.
I'm positive I never said they was.
See, given your mental state at the time and your physical state and the state you were in, Mr. Johnson, is it possible that your memory might not be of the best of that period?
I can remember that whole day clearly. I can remember getting arrested, taken back to the police station, and finding the drugs. And I can also remember me making no reply.
In the summary trial court, Neil Allen is spending the afternoon prosecuting Lee Troop, an unemployed 18-year-old who is charged with carrying an offensive weapon. According to the arresting officer, there had been reports of a knife fight in a block of flats, and that on arriving he had stopped and searched the accused.
The inside of his right leg there was quite a large kitchen knife, and in the same the pocket in his trousers on the same side there was a retractable knife which is possibly used for written packaging.
And am I right in saying that the larger of the two with the large black handle is the knife which was in the accused's sock?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he make any reply?
Yes, the reply was, there was a guy outside with a scaffolding pole threatening me with it, so I had the knife for defence.
No.
In his evidence, Lee Troop denies making this incriminating reply and says he was simply collecting the knife from a neighbour who had borrowed it.
But you knew you were going to a neighbour's house to collect a razor-sharp knife and return it to your father. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Why didn't you take something to carry it in?
I never thought at the time.
Fold it in a newspaper?
I never thought at the time.
Well, why didn't you cover it up in a bag?
I never had a bag at the time.
Well, why didn't you take a bag out of the house?
I never thought.
You had it concealed about your person because you had it for the purposes of getting involved in violence with it, isn't that right?
No.
So the police were telling lies about your making a statement about having been threatened by someone with a scaffolding pole.
Yes, there was no scaffolding poles in the area at that time.
They're lying about that reply that they say you made, about
Yes.
having the knife for defence.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Money short, was it?
Money was short at sometimes.
You didn't have a job?
No.
You were financing a drug habit, I think you indicated, from theft.
I was tempted to make money any way I could.
Tempted to make money any way you could. Those are your words, right? Carry on.
Stealing was what I done to get my money. My mother was trying to understand the position I was in, and she was trying to help me out. And at the time, she thought she was helping me out by giving me money, because she didn't want me going the streets stealing.
She gave you money to save you, to stop you from dealing, is that what you said?
Stop me from stealing.
Stealing? I'm sorry, I thought you said dealing. My mistake.
Never do.
Were you ever tempted into selling drugs?
Some people.
Easy money it would be.
I suppose some people can't make a lot of money, but when you've got a drug problem at the same time, you would take, if you had drugs in your pocket, you would take them before you would sell them.
Well, would you? If you can make enough from selling some to buy twice as many for yourself from your own dealer, temptation not there?
I don't sell drugs. I've never wanted to sell drugs.
In Neil Allen's court, the final witness is Lee Troop's father, who says that the knife did belong to him and that he sent his son Lee to fetch it.
Did you see Lee later on that day?
Yeah.
And where was he when you saw him?
Yeah. Well, I come up the house and says, the police want to see you. So I says, what for? He says, for that knife. I says, but it's my knife. He says, but they say I've been carrying a knife. So I went down the stairs and I saw the policeman. And I told him, I says, that's my knife.
Right. Tell me, Mr. Troop, are you sure it was Lee that came to tell you this?
Yeah.
You sure?
I'm sure it was, yeah.
Could it have been somebody else that told you?
I don't think so. Well, it's been that long, but I distinctly remember Lee coming up and saying, the police want to see you.
Okay. If you bear with me for a second. What's that girl called, Tracy? Tracy? Tracy. You know a girl called Tracy who lives in the stair?
Yeah.
Is it possible that she was the one who came to tell you?
I've not a clue.
All right. All right.
I'll wait a minute.
That's not a clue. All right. In any event.
Wait.
Yes, Mr. Tripp.
It might. Well, see, it's been that long ago, you know. Maybe the lassie did come up and say, oh, you know, see, but...
Right, so you can't remember really if it was either Lee who came up to see you or if it was...
No, I think it was a girl that come this. It was. Sorry, I remember now. The wee lassie come up and she says, Lee's down the stair. I thought it was Lee. I keep thinking that. I don't know why.
You're now saying that Tracy came to get you and Lee was in fact down the stairs with the police officers?
I think it was a... Well, somebody did come anyway, I know that. I just can't remember. It's been that long.
All right then, Mr. Troop, thank you very much. I have no further questions. Mr. Fiscal.
I'm looking for where the witness is not agreeing with what the accused has said about either matters of great importance or even matters of trivial detail. One uses that as the first step to suggesting that perhaps they're telling lies. It's part of the way that the game is played.
Your initial recollection was that it was Lee who came up and said the police want to see you.
Yeah.
And you were sure of that.
Yeah.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then 4.5 minutes ago, you think it was Lee.
Yeah.
And 4 minutes ago, it was maybe the lassie.
Yeah.
And 3.75 minutes ago, you remembered that it was the lassie.
I think it was, yeah.
Well, now, Mr. Troop,
sometimes I can't remember, you know.
Yes. Would it be wrong of me to suggest that you were sure that it was Lee until that was obviously not the answer that Mr. McInnes wanted from you?
I've not... See, I hadn't a clue at the time.
And then Tracy entered into it as soon as her name was mentioned. Maybe you thought Mr. McInnes...
I don't really know the girl. I don't really know the girl, you know.
No. But well, you said you knew who she was.
Yeah. She stays in the bottom flat.
Tracy, the bottom flat, that's right. And when Mr. McInnes mentioned her name, it occurred to you, didn't it, that perhaps she had some part to play in it. So you decided you better go along with that, and you changed your story.
No, that's wrong.
Well, who was it who came to the door?
I'm not really sure, but it was either Lee or the lassie, one of the two.
How long was Lee away out of the house?
I've not a clue.
Well, wait till you hear the question. You might find it's a question you can answer. From the time that he went out to the time that someone came to the door and said that the police wanted to see you, how long?
I've not a clue.
Well, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes?
I've just not a clue how long, but...
Hours, weeks?
No, it might have been over an hour, I don't know.
Might have been?
Over an hour, I don't know.
All right.
I've not a clue about the boy.
Now, you say that you told the police that it was your knife.
Yes, it is.
And you didn't tell the police that you'd sent Lee to get it.
No.
And the reason you didn't tell them that was because you hadn't sent him to get it. Is that not so?
No, the policeman asked me, he says, whose knife? I says, that's my knife. He says, well, I'm charging him with carrying an offensive weapon.
Right. So why didn't you then say, well, no, he's not carrying an offensive weapon, he's doing a message for me, getting it back from a neighbour?
I never even thought about it at the time.
Because it wasn't true. You've thought about it since. Isn't that so? Thank you.
Confirm for me, if you would, that you'd spent £125 to get 25 tablets.
Yes.
And just think that if you'd sold them for £250, and you could have done that readily, you could have bought twice as many drugs for yourself. You could have had a really good weekend out of that.
Listen, sir, day drugs weren't for selling. They were for me to take, me alone.
Mr. Johnson suggests to you succumb to the inevitable temptation of one who abuses drugs on the scale you say you were abusing them to make money any way you could, as you say yourself, any way you could, by selling drugs, a trap which so many people have fallen into before you, and that's what you were caught with on the 18th of September last year, was a supplier's amount to be supplied.
No, I don't deny the fact I had day drugs on me, but day drugs weren't for selling. I had no intention of selling them, and I never have sold drugs. Day drugs were for me to take. I needed day drugs at that time.
Thank you.
The most depressing set of circumstances is where you have given everything in trying to belittle or ridicule or destroy the accused, and he has done well. Modestly and carefully giving answers, not losing the head, not getting cheeky, but sticking to your story. And when an accused does that, then I have assisted his case rather than my own. And I think it's generally true to say that if they're able to do that, then either they're extremely experienced liars, which some of them are, or they're telling the truth, which some of them are.
In my view, the accused and his corroborating witness were unconvincing, and I consider their evidence to be neither credible nor reliable. I turn to the evidence.
Lee Troop was duly found guilty, and after reports into his background had been completed, was sentenced to 240 hours community service. Today, Ian McSporran will sum up the case against Scott Johnston, and the jury will decide whether or not to give him the conviction he seeks.
This is a case, ladies and gentlemen, where it is not disputed that Mr. Johnston had drugs in his possession. And he's not charged with having drugs in his possession. It's said that he had intent to supply them, or that he was concerned in supplying them. A more serious matter altogether. It is said that the accused admitted that he was in possession of these tablets to sell them. And if you believe that, in my submission to you, you would have little difficulty in convicting him and accepting that he did have an intent to supply these tablets. We go on to Mr. Johnston's evidence. He doesn't have to give evidence, but he chose to do so and expose himself then to cross-examination by the Crown. And you may think it's a case where he really had to give some kind of explanation for having so many tablets in his possession, in reality, if not in law. And what does he say? He's had a long-term drug problem. He was getting treatment for it. He was cutting down his consumption of sulfate or amphetamine dramatically. And it was just an astonishing coincidence that the very day he decided to get a supplier's amount into his possession, that very day he was unlucky enough to be arrested, and they were found. Well, was that just a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen? Or could the police have stopped him at any given time around that period and found a bag of drugs for sale? And you have to assess the evidence, ladies and gentlemen. You have to balance the evidence, the version given by the officers of the law against the version given by a paranoid, mixed up, messed up thief.
All that remains is for the defence solicitor and the sheriff to sum up the case, and then they must wait for the jury to reach their verdict.
And if you ask me to pin my colours to the mast, then I will say that on balance I consider it likely that the jury will convict. I won't put any money on that, of course.
Gentlemen, your spokesman, please stand. Have you agreed on a verdict?
We have.
And what is your verdict, please, in respect of charge one?
None, not proven.
Is that unanimous or by majority?
Majority.
The verdict of not proven is peculiarly Scottish and is a verdict of acquittal just as surely as is not guilty. When I hear a verdict of not proven, I don't think so close, but so far I think I haven't proved my case.
Stand up, Scott Johnston. In view of the verdict which has been returned by the jury, I now discharge you from the bar of this court. You are free to leave.
But Scott Johnson is not free to leave. He will in fact return to jail, where he's already serving a 2-year sentence for serious assault.
It's certainly wearisome to see the same names coming back, doing the same things, committing more crimes of the same kind, seeing those people continually commit crime, continually abuse the judicial process, and occasionally succeed in that. So that is frustrating. But as a fiscal, I just have to take that as part of the job.
With 300 cases in Edinburgh every week, the prison vans are usually busy. Most of the passengers have made the journey before, and with a reoffending rate of 90% among young criminals, most will make it again.
I think it's impossible not to get cynical, but you've got to try and keep it in some sort of check.
No one illustrates that problem better than Kevin Fife, who features in Neil Allen's 40th and final case of a long, hard week.
Oh dear. Right, let's concentrate on the issues. Why should we?
Kevin Fife is one of the court's most regular visitors. Today he is pleading guilty to attempting to steal a car.
The accused Fife was in the front of the vehicle, and it seems clear that he was fiddling about with exposed wires on the steering column, the only possible intention, I think, being to start it by means of what's called hot wiring, and obviously if the wrong wires touch, the horn sounds. So a suspicious neighbour telephoned the police.
My Lord has Mr. Fife's previous convictions before him, and my Lord will see that they run to 8 pages. And it's apparent that in the last 12 years, he's been in prison for 11.5 years of those 12. I understand from him that his longest period at liberty in the past 12 years is 8 weeks.
An awful lot of them learn sense at about the age of 23 or 24, and they disappear. Some of them go on and on and on, and the number who do is increasing. Generally, I think drugs has an awful lot to do with older offenders going on and on and on offending, instead of settling down as a good woman at the age of 23, and you next hear of them when they're 45 and they get involved in a fight at their daughter's wedding or something like that.
Kevin Fife, at the age of 28, if I've done the arithmetic correctly, you've got 42 previous convictions, and this latest offence was committed within 1 day of your completing the last sentence imposed upon you. The time has long passed when anything other than the protection of the public takes priority in dealing with you. And on the charge there's a sentence of 6 months imprisonment.
I can think of one instance, and only one, where an accused stopped a terrific catalogue of offending because he was frightened of the jail. Most of the accused are bad enough, but not wicked. Most of them will grow out of it by their mid-20s. Very many of them are more sad characters than bad. Some of them are on their way working from sad to bad. One or two are just plain mad.